Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is from 1968, and it's Dragon's Return, a Slovak film directed by Edward Krešner. I haven't seen any other of his films, but there is a few. Rabbit hole warning. As always, the second run, there's a nice little booklet with essays. This edition has an introduction by Ratislav Starenka of the Slovak Film Institute. It has an archive of film appreciation by Czech and Slovak cinema expert Peter Hames from 2015, who's been on quite a few second run titles. And there's also a brand new documentary featuring Krešner himself from 2022. Which is very good. Now, this is a very simple film about a man called Dragon, or his nickname is Dragon, who was a potterer in a village, and he comes back and we're introduced to him through a lovely piece of camera work that shows off the countryside, and then we see him framed against the countryside, and he's wearing an eye patch, and he meets a man in a cart, also with a horse, which is probably a better way to carry a cart. And he asks the man, "Don't you recognise me?" And the man drives off at speed in his cart with his horse and starts running around the village saying, "Dragon's back." I'm not going to break into the Queen song. It's going to be a dragon attack. And everybody is rather alarmed that Dragon's back. The film goes backwards and forwards from the present day to we find out how Dragon, or why Dragon is wearing an eye patch. And he doesn't say a lot. It's almost like a western. He doesn't say a lot. But then the people of the village make up for it by not saying a lot either. The film is, you could almost be silent. There is dialogue, but there's not a lot of dialogue. It's more about the power of the image and the power of the relationship between Dragon and the villagers. We get no explanation of why he's here, why he's returned. But the villagers have a calamity as their cattle has run off and there's a fire, but Dragon volunteers that he'll go get them, lead them through bandit territory and get them back, and the village have a meeting and decide somebody else should go with them, even though they don't trust him, because he has this air of, when he's around, bad things happen. So they send the new husband of his, either his ex-wife or certainly his ex-fiancée, who has remarried in his absence. Again, we don't know how long he's been away. So obviously there's tension between the new husband and Dragon as it turns into a small road movie. There's a really powerful scene involving the cows in a burning forest, and again, as I said during my letter never sent video, that's not CG fire. At one shot you can actually see there's some cows' hoofs actually are on fire, the kind of thing you wouldn't get away with nowadays. But again, it's a very elemental film, a very primal film. It's about simple things as far as, we see a flashback to a harvest not being successful, and the villagers turning on Dragon because they think he has flour, but because he's a potterer, he doesn't necessarily have flour, even though it is in bags and it is powdery looking. And it does bring up that question of, obviously he's the outsider, his house, his pottery is kind of outside the village a little bit on a hill, so geographically he's an outsider. Because he is a creative person, he is making these pots and dishes that have little ornamental animals on them, or dragons on top of the handles or whatever, whereas the rest of the village is basically farming and crops. So you have an outsider by geography, an outsider by trade. He's a creative type. The village is certainly not creative, or particularly forward thinking. So again, these questions of why would he come back to a place that doesn't or hasn't treated him that well? Is he looking to fit back in by doing this good deed? What is his motivations? Has the town or the village and the village people, have they learned anything through their experience? Can people learn? Can people forgive? Can people overcome the bad things that have happened to them and turn the other cheek? All questions will or will not be answered through the duration of this film. Like the best films, it's no longer than it needs to be. It's only about 84 minutes, something like that. It absolutely flies by. Beautiful black and white cinematography of the countryside, and you do kind of get a sense of a world trapped not only in time but by geography and hills and valleys and such like. There is no real date on the film, but again there is a sense of, you could almost have this in the, not necessarily a folk horror, but certainly a kind of folk film based on superstition, and you could see this as a story that's kind of been passed down through generation. A person who comes from the village, has been away for years, let's say, comes back, tries to do the village a favour. How is he treated? Again, does that make him part of the village again? So you could see this as a folk tale. But again, it just kind of proves you don't need lots of dialogue. You don't need lots of backstory. Obviously we find out what happened to him, but you don't have to know every character's motivation, because again, cinema is a visual medium, and Dragon's Return is a really wonderful little film. Again, if you want all the answers, spoiler alert, you're not going to get all the answers, but it is just a wonderful, simple story, because again, sometimes the best films don't have to be overly complicated and overly filled with subplots and different threads that all come together in the end. They don't necessarily have to be like that. They can just be very simple. And Dragon's Return is simple, but it's really quite effective. So that's my random review of another wonderful release by Second Run. This is available on Blu-ray and Second Run DVD. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know if you've seen Dragon's Return and what you think of it. And hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films saying farewell.